And we're going to talk about the fact that about sovereignty. Okay. Okay, this is a private information share on sovereignty. There's two things that I ask. First, if you do not get a concept, just put it in the back of your mind and think about it. These concepts are very abstract. The law is very abstract. It will come to you over time, like the scriptures say, line upon line, precept upon precept. When this was first brought to me back in the early 90s, I told the guy he was crazy. And then he brought out some court cases, and then I thought, wow, if this is true, I absolutely have to look into it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Oops. Okay, secondly, I ask that you pay it forward. This has cost me literally tens of thousands of dollars to do this stuff, to learn this stuff. And so what you're paying here today to come to this private information share is nothing compared to what the cost investment is. And the only thing I ask is that you pay it forward. And when I say pay it forward, if you don't know what that means, rent the movie. There's a movie called Pay It Forward. If you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Is there a price for your freedom that you're not willing to pay? You know, you got to think about that. My attitude is this is what I tell the cops, okay? They don't bother me, usually. Knock on wood. Is there any wood? But if I do, I tell them, if you're going to violate my rights, then you better be prepared to go all the way and take me over there and blow my brains out, because by the time I'm done with you, you're going to wish you did, and I'll do it all within the law. And all of a sudden, they decide to do something else. It's amazing how that works. Now, there's a lot of people that are in this private information share that are from Canada, so we're going to talk a little bit about some Canadian case law. This is out of the Canadian Handbook for Judges, and it talks about Canada as part of what we call a common law world, and England provided the fountain from which the common law emerged. Thousands of English decisions are now by adoption embedded in our jurisprudence, and the decisions of the House of Lords and other English courts will continue, we think, to be cited in our courts and must be given the most careful and respectful consideration as highly persuasive. The judgments of Australia and New Zealand courts may also have a highly persuasive effect, and the similarity not just of the legal system but of the conditions in the United States is such that many American decisions may have a strong persuasive effect. So we're going to talk a lot, most of my stuff is U.S. case law. But I found there's Canadian case law that talks about it. There's also, I've seen Australian case law, English case law. I mean, it's all there. I mean, and I think that every country on the planet that this applies to, now how well it applies is you're going to have to find, if people are in Turkey or someplace, you got to find case law and stuff like that that's going to support your position. But anyway, so what is a sovereign? What we're going to talk about today is what is a sovereign? Who is a sovereign? Where does sovereignty come from? The rights and duties of sovereignty, how you can lose your sovereignty. How do you regain your sovereignty? Sovereignty is the right to rule. Sovereign can be a king or a queen. Sovereign can be a group of people. A sovereign can be a living soul. Sovereignty is the right to rule. A nation or state sovereign is a person. A sovereignty is the right to govern. A nation or state sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides. That's Chisholm versus Georgia. That's an old U.S. court case, 1795. The very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life for the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself. You think about that. Any material right to the enjoyment of life. Well, if you think about it, if IRS can force you to pay them $1, then aren't you a slave? Aren't you being forced to work for them for nothing for that dollar? Isn't that slavery? That's exactly what slavery is. Well, but you're not even getting paid for it. If you're getting paid, that's one thing. In a monarchy, the king or queen is sovereign. In a British common law country, the sovereigns are the people, okay? And in the United States, we have British common law. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of the sovereignty. The sovereign people, through their representatives, have created the court and the board as well as the municipal council and have defined the rights and duties of each. That's a Canadian case. That's reference Casa Loma in Toronto. Okay, it's the same stuff. Now there's certain words that we're going to talk about today, and one of them's in here. This is a New York case. The people or sovereign are not bound by general words and statutes restrictive of prerogative right. Okay, prerogative right. That's a word that we're going to talk about more. Okay, prerogative right, title, or interest unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king or the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign, and it is a maxim of common law that when an act is made for the common good to prevent injury, the king should be bound, though not named. But when a statute is general and prerogative right would be divested or taken from the king, he shall not be bound. So the people have been ceded all the rights of the king. Do you know we're all kings and queens? We are. I go into court and argue that all the time. I'm in the Supreme Court right now. I was in the Supreme Court 2 other times. No problem. Never get any arguments out of that. It's amazing. I was in Toronto. I was preparing a lawsuit, and I was at this copy store. I think it was like Office Place or something like that, making copies for my lawsuit because I had to make copies. And there was a lawyer there. This was in the Ontario Court of Appeals. There was a lawyer there. And he says, you're doing an appeal. And I said, yeah. I said, it's based on the fact that the people are sovereign. And the lawyer says, oh, yeah, everybody knows that.
But in practice...
Well, you've given up your sovereignty, okay? And I'm going to show you how that's happened, okay? But you can take it back because you're the king. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. Now, think about that. Devolved. What happens when something devolves? Okay, well, first of all, it evolves away, and then it devolves back, right? Isn't that what happens? So what happened is the sovereignty was with the people in England. They got themselves into what the courts viewed to be contracts, and they essentially gave it up, and then at the Revolution, they got it back. Yes? You know, I don't know how, quite frankly.
Top one, that top brown arrow.
Well, that makes too much sense. Well, thank you for telling me. I've been trying to figure out how to get that to go away. Okay, so at the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, okay? The people of a state are entitled to all the rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. It will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states and the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the states several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. Unconditionally. That doesn't mean they're sovereign if we can get them into some contract. That means they're sovereign, and there's no discussion about it. That's why they put in the Declaration of Independence unalienable rights. Now these lawyers, if you go into that Black's Fifth over there, and you'll see that typically in any law dictionary, they say when you go and look up unalienable, then they'll say go see inalienable. And then under inalienable, it'll say that you can give up your rights based on some contract. Well, that's a bunch of garbage, okay? And I specifically tell them that my rights are unalienable, okay? If you're a person, then they're inalienable, but I'm not a person. I'm the king, and you have no authority over me, and get out of my face. and you stand up to them, and all of a sudden you see who blinks first. It's always them. And this is U.S. Supreme Court, okay? 416, that's 16 Howard, okay? That's the U.S. Supreme Court. That's an old court case, early 1800s, late 1700s. Governments are but trustees acting under derived authority and have no power to delegate what is not delegated to them. Did you know that the only power that they have is power that you delegated to them? Now, do I have the power to go to you and say, I'm taking your money because this guy over needs your money? Do I have that power? Well, then, do you think the government has it? Absolutely not. You gave it to them. Okay, it's by contract. It's always by contract. And again, you don't know who you are. You have to assert yourself. If you don't assert your rights, you lose them. How many times did I tell you that? Anything you say will be used against you in a court of law.
Meaning of state. Here. It's a country.
Yes, that's right.
It's not Ohio.
Why do you think they call it the Texas National Bank? You go at the National Bank of Texas. I've seen it down here, okay? It's the National Bank of Texas. Well, that's because Texas is a nation. Even they admit it.
We're not comparing them, so
Yeah. Okay, anyways, a sovereign is exempt from suit not because of any formal conception or obsolete theory, but on the logical and practical ground that there can be no legal right as against the authority that makes the law on which the right depends. Okay? That's why I'm a sovereign, okay? They don't have a shred of authority over me. And they know it. Now, if the king commits murder, yeah, they can come and get you. Okay? If the king commits murder or assault or some common law offense, yeah, they can come and get you. But that's the only time. Okay? And if it's the same thing. And in my documents, if you look in those documents, it says that you have no more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. Okay? Well, a Walmart rent-a-cop sees me commit murder, he can arrest me. Okay? I don't care who it is. So, one of you guys could. You see me commit murder? Absolutely. And you should. I've seen court cases that say that that the reason, and these are old court cases, okay, it comes down to sovereign immunity. The reason you can't sue the government is because the government is the people, and it's like suing yourself, if you think about it. And that's what they say, the government is the people, and you can't sue the government because it's like suing yourself. Well, so then, you think about it, people sue the government all the time, and even I sue the government, so then it's not the people anymore, is it?
Would that be because of the maximum law that states that when government reduces itself to the level of business, it becomes just as suitable as business?
Exactly. And that's actually, oh man, I'll think of that case. There's a case like in the 60s that talks about that. Yeah, I'll think of it. Okay, this is talking about the Magna Carta. Okay, the Magna Carta is called a Great Charter of English Liberty. The Canadian Handbook for Judges cites the Magna Carta on page 77. Magna Carta, we will not deny or defer any man either justice or right. And the Magna Carta is just as applicable today as it's ever been. And now look at this. Remember I told you the sovereignty devolved on the people. So the people in England were sovereign at one point. Now this is when they were sovereign, okay? What?
We lost some audio for a second, it came back up.
The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of predecessors of